My next guest is Elias, the Spartan, Theodorou. Elias, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Elias, congratulations on achieving the first exemption as a professional athlete to be allowed to use cannabinoids as part of your medical regime.
Yes.
And that's quite amazing.
Yeah, and first of its kind in any capacity in professional sports.
Sure.
It sets precedent for myself, but also all other athletes. The avenue that I did it through was through the British Columbia Athletic Commission. Now, because of my process and approval, it's opened the doors for all other MMA fighters and boxers, both amateur and professional, to apply for their own therapeutic use exemption if appropriate. Mm-hmm. Moreover, it also allowed, once again, because I attacked this therapeutic use exemption on different aspects with my counsel. One of them was, again, my medical needs as a patient, but also the standard of testing that they have. They have a one size fits all in the capacity of whether you're a 115-pound woman competing or you're a 265-pound man competing. They have the same standard of test, which is ridiculous because
same
every
blood
body
content is
fat solubles, et cetera, thresholds. For instance, one of my friends who's a professional fighter, he's a heavyweight. He got flagged for cannabis in his system. His win was overturned. He was suspended for, I think, 6 to 8 months. They penalized him, they fined him, and in addition, when he did his own private test, because it was weeks, if not almost a month, when he last medicated, it took 81 days for it to get out of his system. Because again, he's just a bigger dude, and the same aspect would happen for females because of their body. And again, that standard of testing actually persecutes different athletes for their bodies, whether it's, again, a larger heavyweight or a smaller female strawweight.
Sure. So was that your friend, was he under the UFC?
No, another organization. Again, as a blanket term, cannabis is a prohibited substance in athletics in general. So that's why, again, this is the first of its kind in any aspect. Obviously, we've seen different organizations, different leagues, different sports remove the testing, but this is not only a therapeutic use exemption, and what that exactly means is it's the first case that cannabis is considered and approved as medicine in sport. And the implications, again, go beyond what I've opened the door for all other athletes in British Columbia, both boxing and amateur, boxing and MMA as mentioned. But now, because of the way the North America Athletic Commissions work in cohesion to have a comprehensive standard, they respect the rulings of other jurisdictions. So for the both for the positive and negative aspects. So for instance, if I was to, let's say, get caught with a steroid in New York and I was suspended for a year, California wouldn't approve me to compete there until my suspension is up. Now too, the therapeutic use exemption would be accepted as a ruling, and in any jurisdiction in the US and Canada that has medical cannabis, I would be a candidate to an approval there, just because of the way the system works. So ironically enough, no longer with the UFC and a free agent now, I can still be an agent of change for medical cannabis in athletics.
You bet. What do you use cannabis for medically?
I have bilateral neuropathy. So it's essentially nerve damage of my upper extremities.
As a result of your career?
My career, but also in a previous life, I was a semi-pro skateboarder. So I used to jump off of very tall sets of handrails and stairs before I realized I'm terrified of heights. So
you've been a fan of giving yourself a beating for years.
Yeah, different directions, right? Whether it's gravity or another person punching me in my head.
Right.
But specifically, I had surgery in my wrist, two broken bones and a couple fractures. They made me a bone graft where they took bone and cartilage out of my hip and replaced my wrist. From there, there was degeneration, arthritis, neuropathy that developed as well. And then my career itself, the right side in regards to my neck and my elbow, There's stingers, radiating heat, and other type of detrimental aspects that affect me and my quality of life, both as a athlete and a patient, and that's where the two brackets where I fall under.
Sure, so it's primarily for pain mitigation then?
Pain management, yes, and obviously the anti-inflammatory components that come with it in regards to alleviating it. Again, more and more research has been showing that inflammation in general is the cause of a lot of different ailments and diseases throughout the spectrum. So in my specific case, cannabis is the only medicine that works for me individually as a patient, and all other aspects which I was forced to exhaust in this process just compound not only the debilitating symptoms that I have, but also the side effects as well. Being forced as a professional athlete, not even as a patient, but as a professional athlete to compete at the highest level, when told I'm not allowed to take my medicine and forced to take alternatives that, again, give me side effects that really hinder my ability to compete. But now, with a therapeutic use exemption, I'm able to compete at a even playing field, and more importantly, as a Canadian, to exercise my fundamental right to medicate as prescribed by my doctor and open up that door for all other athletes.
Beautiful. Do you know of other athletes as a result of your success who are now moving towards receiving an exemption?
I don't know specifically if that's the case, but many different athletes have reached out to me, both in regards to BC, Canada, MMA fighters, boxers, also other Olympians, because they're under the same protocols under the World Anti-Doping Agency, which sees cannabis as a prohibited substance. So unfortunately for the US athletes, they don't have the avenue of medical rights that we are lucky to have here in this country.
Due to the federal prohibition in the States.
Federal prohibition, and that was one of the uphill battles in regards to my therapeutic use exemption with USADA. They are primarily funded by the U.S. government, which looks at cannabis as a Schedule I drug, which means there's no there's no medical property to it, technically under their regulations. So the interesting aspect, again, the different avenues I was able to attack this therapeutic use exemption, both as a medical aspect, the standard of testing, and also my fundamental rights afforded to me under the Charter of Rights and Freedom in Canada, and more so, without the technical term, I always mess it up, but essentially there's more rights afforded to me as a patient and without medical persecution and under the Disability Act that Canada has.
Very cool. So do you think that professional sports could be one of the primary avenues by which maybe the U.S. federal government will begin to consider changing the law, because there is so much desire on the part of professional athletes to access cannabinoids, CBD for pain and sleep, and THC for other things as well? Do you think that's going to happen?
I think definitely, because we have a platform that expands to the masses and can really be a game changer. Obviously, there's other individuals and sectors of the country in the U.S., but also even here in Canada, that are still under the prohibition based on their medical rights and needs. I can bring up myself as an athlete, other athletes as mentioned, but also first responders, union workers, and even veterans in some capacity have some restrictions in their cannabis use as professionals.
You bet. All right, Elias, that's a great update, and really appreciate your advocacy for cannabis. Thanks very much for joining us again.
Always a pleasure.